John 11:35. Jesus wept. Powerful verse. When I was 13 years of age, two of my homies, I want to describe how tenuous it is to be a black man or a black child in this world. Two of my homies invited me to go along with them to get back at someone. But I had memorized Proverbs 1:10 that day, and Proverbs 1:10 says, my son, and there was no daddy in the home, so I loved the Proverbs that said, my son, if sinners tempt you, do not consent. And so on the strength of that verse, my son, if sinners tempt you, do not consent, I did not go along with my two homies. My two homies ended up killing someone. And night after night on WMAR TV and WBAL TV, Channel 2 and Channel 11 in Baltimore, their story was being played out. They both received the judicial consequence of life in prison. In fact, the one who invited me to go along died in prison. The other eventually was paroled. So if I had gone along with them, even if I had been standing quoting scripture, I would have received the same penalty, life in prison, and would not, therefore, have been able to escape what Martin King called an airtight cycle of poverty and pathology. That is what young men and older men of ebony hue have to deal with. So I celebrate what this caucus, Representative Wilson, is attempting to do, because my life was saved by a mother who had me memorizing scripture in an effort to inoculate me from the pathology in my environment. And I celebrate everyone who wants to do the same. Let us pray. Eternal Lord God, we praise you for the opportunity to join you in your messianic thrust, to bring deliverance to captives, the recovery of sight to the morally, ethically, and spiritually blind, and to set at liberty those who are bruised. We thank you for this caucus, interested in black men and boys. Because, Lord, you are interested in the marginalized, the lost, the lonely, the least, and the left out. I pray that you would be with the teachers who seek to ensure that there is a harmonious development among black men and boys, a harmonious development of their mental, spiritual, physical, and social powers. I thank you for the student leaders who strive to help their peers increase intellectually, socially, morally, and spiritually, even as Luke 2:52 describes the increase experienced by the Messiah. Challenge us when we are too well pleased with ourselves, when our dreams come true simply because they are too small. Enlarge our territory. Help us to move into a future looking beyond the horizon to a God who is able to do immeasurably, abundantly, above all that we can ask or imagine, according to his power working in and through us. We pray in your matchless name. Amen. Amen.
Thank you very much for that, Chaplain. Now we'll have Congresswoman Frederica Wilson.
Good morning. And thank you to all of you for coming today. You look so wonderful, so proud to have so many of you in the room. We have in the Office of Civil Rights a commission on the social status of black men and boys. It's landmark legislation that was passed 4 years ago. And that commission has the goal of changing the lives of children who look like you forever. So we're working on so many initiatives to address the issues that impact you as black boys and black men. And in Miami, I have a program that I created 30 years ago. It's called the 5,000 Role Models of Excellence Project. And it's all over Florida. It's in Detroit, Michigan. And this program is meant to intervene in the lives of black boys who, while in the 3rd grade through the 12th grade, might find themselves following the wrong crowd, being impacted by peer pressure, and falling by the wayside. That there are men in the community who will catch them and lift them up. So I always say that the best friend for a single mother in the state of Florida is the 5,000 Role Models of Excellence Project. Because little black boys who have no fathers, no uncle, no grandpa to help them travel this perilous road to manhood, they don't know what to do. So they begin to do what their peers do. They follow them. They want to smoke a little weed, they want to cut school, and then they start talking back to the mother. And then when they start talking back to the mother, she throws her hand up and says, I don't know what to do with this boy. He's going straight to hell. And then the 5,000 role models and mentoring programs like that step in and say, giving to us, we got it. And these are men who are dedicating their lives to the uplift of young boys. And in 2004, our chaplain of the Senate, who we are so proud of, came to Miami and was the headliner and spoke at the 5,000 Role Models of Excellence breakfast. 2004, that was a long time ago. So we didn't get an opportunity to induct him into the 5,000 Role Models of Excellence. So I'm going to do that today. We're going to induct him right before you as a member of the 5,000 Role Models of Excellence. I just finished meeting with one upstairs. He's a commissioner in the city of Miami Gardens. He came through the program as a 3rd grader. We have 2 Capitol Police that walk around every night. You got to think about where you were 30 years ago. Most of you in this room weren't even born. So this is a project that has produced millions of good men in society who are changing the lives of little black boys. These are the same boys who came through the program who are now mentors in the program, which is phenomenal. And so, Chaplain Black, Will you please come forward?
And this is a total surprise.
Come forward. Stand with him as we induct him. Are you taking pictures?
Oh, yeah. But he's got it.
Okay. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, say your name,
I, Barry Black,
do solemnly pledge
do solemnly pledge
that I will uphold the mission
that I will uphold the mission
of the 5,000 role models of excellence
of the 5,000 role models of excellence
by intervening in the lives
by intervening in the lives
of at-risk youth.
of at-risk youth.
I accept my God-given responsibility
I accept my God-given responsibility
of serving as a role model
of serving as a role model with a bow tie
as we strive
to
fulfill our goal
fulfill our goal
of guiding our young boys
of guiding our young boys
into manhood.
into manhood.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Drape it over his shoulder. We don't want to mess up his.
I even wore the right bow tie. Thank you.
And I'm sure you can even imagine, just from hearing what he said at the beginning of the prayer, how much of an impact he made on Miami-Dade County, the city of Miami, when he was the breakfast speaker. And I tell everyone that I know, this breakfast is 30 years old. We've had Maya Angelou, Harry Belafonte, Martin Luther King III, all kinds of speakers. And by far, Barry Black was the best. And the one that I remember the most. So let's give him a Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. All right. Remember, that's Barry Black, not Barry White. Okay.
So thank you so much for joining us today to discuss black men and boys in the classroom. I want to give a special thanks to the director of the Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys, Mr. Mark Spencer. Thank you so much for joining us today. I also want to thank the National Honor Society of Ron Brown College Preparatory High School for joining us today. And as a former school teacher, school principal, school board member, and school administrator, school district administrator, education has played a significant role in my life, personally and professionally. I've seen education open the doors of opportunity and change the lives of millions. Education has been the key to beating the odds and achieving the American dream for those of us who grew up with little, for people of color, and for those fighting desperately not to fall victim to the school to prison pipeline. That is why we're here today. Throughout my years as an educator, I've watched the magical connection that occurs when black boys have black teachers, especially black male teachers. When I was a school principal, I had one black man in my school, and he was the physical education teacher. My school was 1/3 African American, 1/3 Hispanic, and 1/3 Anglo. And when I would look for my little black boys, they would be outside on the PE field in the PE shed with the black PE teacher. Because that was who they felt connected to. So throughout my whole years as a principal, I tried to recruit as many black men as I could, but I couldn't find any. I would recruit and recruit and recruit, and I only had, and I was the principal of that school for 8 years, and I was the only black man I had and could ever find. So we have a goal of recruiting more black male teachers to go into our school, especially our urban schools, where our black boys need true role models, truly men that they can connect to, and not only that, who they can see themselves as. That's what we call a role model. When you can look at somebody and you say, that's who I want to be, just like. And if you don't see that, and everything you see are people selling drugs or running the street or driving fast cars or making strong money, that's all you know that you want to be. And then in the school, you have these ladies who are nice, they're kind, they love you, you love them, but you can't look at them and see what you want to be because they don't look like you. So the little girls used to always say to me, Miss Wilson, you're always doing something for the boys. When are you going to do something for the girls? That's what they used to say. And I would say to them, you may think this is for the boys, but this is for you. I'm trying to make you good husbands and good fathers for your children. So they don't ask me that anymore. You know, Miss Wilson, my boyfriend is getting 5,000 role models and he's going to college. Because that's our goal, is to send these boys so that they could be strong breadwinners, and they have proven to us that it works. So today, you'll hear from some of the foremost black educators from across the country that will all tell you the same thing. We need to recruit and retain black male teachers. If you don't believe me, believe the research extensively documenting black men's importance in the classroom. A recent early education and development study found that children taught by teachers of the same race develop better learning and problem-solving skills by the time they turn 7. This effect is prominent for black and Latino children. A Johns Hopkins study pointed out that having one black teacher in 3rd grade through 5th grade decreased the dropout rates of black boys from low-income families by 39% and led up to a 29% increased likelihood of pursuing college. Those numbers are incredible. So our panelists, Dr. Travis Bristol, conducted a study that indicated black male teachers create socio-emotional environments in schools that can shelter black boys from societal and institutional racism and trauma. Sadly, while we know the importance of teachers of color and black male teachers in particular, in the 2021 school year, just listen to this, 1.3% of public school teachers across the country were black men. And we're going to change that. We also know that black males have the lowest retention rate of any other teaching demographically. Second, only to Asian men, black men comprise the smallest group of K-12 educators. That is so bad. We don't have enough black men in the classroom. A few programs in my home state of Florida have started to address this issue. Duval County, which is Jacksonville, has a new initiative to hire 1,000 more black male teachers by 2025. The University of South Florida recently started a Call Me Mr. program to cultivate more black male teachers. But let's be honest for a moment. None of these programs can make a meaningful stride in attracting black men into the classroom if we do not address the elephant in the room. Let's be clear. We do not pay our teachers a livable wage. Even parents nowadays say to their children, I don't want you to be a teacher. You need to try to be something else because teachers don't make any money. Even teachers say to their students, that's the last thing you want to be is a teacher because they don't pay any money. So I filed something called the American Teachers Act. It's a bill that creates a grant program in the federal government to establish a minimum salary across the board. You know how people talk about the minimum wage? Well, the minimum wage for beginning teachers would be $60,000 a year. So when you graduate from college, wherever you went to work, they would pay you $60,000 a year. Now that's just the floor. But there is a ceiling in other places that even pay more. But that's just the beginning. You have to think about the rural areas, the small cities. There are some teachers who make $17,000 a year. So we've got to change that so that we can recruit black men. Because all of these little black boys that I have coming through the 5,000 Role Models of Excellence Project, they want to be engineers. They say to me, they want to own their own business. They want to be their own boss. They really don't want to be teachers, and I grab them up in the if you want this scholarship, you're going to be a teacher. Okay, Ms. Wilson, I'll be a teacher. So this is just one of the many challenges in front of us today. Today's panel will focus on how policymakers can address this critical issue further. And as the founder of the U.S. Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys, and a former educator, this work has been pivotal to my life's mission of ending the school to prison pipeline. It's so real, and it happens so often to all of our children, especially our black boys. So thank you so much for joining me on this meaningful conversation and to this terrific panel of industry leaders for lending your voice and expertise on how we can attract more black men and boys to the classroom. Thank you to all of you who have agreed to be panelists, and thank you so much for coming. And I'm going to change the service back over. Come on, doctor. Take over. Take it away.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Let's give Congresswoman Wilson a hand. And thank you again, Congresswoman, for all your work in this area. We recognize that we would not be here without the important work that you've done. But with that said, I'm going to get out the way and ask our moderator for today, Dr. Ayize Sabater, to come up, and you can get us started, sir. Thank you.
Good morning. I hope you all are well.
Good morning. Good morning.
Can you all hear me all right with the mask? Or do I need to take it off? You know, we're still in the pandemic, so brother's trying to be safe. So I'm going to ask if all of the panelists would come on down. You are the next kid. No. And we're going to ask the panelists as you come. Let's pause right here. We're going to ask here today. And I want to give thanks to Congresswoman Wilson for her vision and even helping to embark upon this tremendous work that is critically needed. Come on, let's give the Congresswoman a hand again. And I want to thank each one of you for thinking not robbery to join us today to really focus upon this important matter. I'm Dr. Ayize Sabater, and I'm going to introduce myself, but I'm going to also ask my panelists to introduce themselves. for the panel, I'm going to ask if we could try and keep maybe within a minute or two responses. So I'm going to ask if you can introduce yourself in a minute or two. You know, you get some folk, they go on, give their dissertation and their introductions. So I'm going to model, and I'm going to try and do mine in a minute. So Ayize Sabater, I am a 30-plus year educator. In fact, one of my mentees is Dr. Malcolm Woodland, who is helping to organize this session. So, So I've helped to start 2 schools. One is a Montessori public charter school, Shining Stars, here in the district. Another one after graduating from Morehouse Freeform Academy. I've been head of school, Montessori parent, Montessori researcher, Montessori school founder, and now blessed to be the first Black executive director of the Association Montessori International of the U.S., which is one of the largest Montessori associations here in the U.S. And so that be me, and that was 45 seconds. So I'm going to pass the mic to ask the gentleman to go ahead and introduce who you be. Oh, excuse me, he's an educator. Who you are. That's right. Please, Brother Valentine.
Good afternoon. My name is Curtis Valentine. I'm the founder of Real Men Teach, a national campaign to recruit and retain men of color in teaching. The group was incubated in my school district. I also sit on the Board of Education of Prince George's County, Maryland, in my 3rd term. Also a member of the Council on Urban Boards of Education, a national association of school board members. In my day job, I am the co-director of the Reinventing American Schools project at the Progressive Policy Institute. I am also an adjunct professor at the University of Maryland College Park, where I teach education policy.
And before it goes down, Brother Valentine, you know, I must say this as a Morehouse grad, the Morehouse Man of the Year for the DC Alumni Chapter. Give the Man of the Year.
That was not my seconds. He took that from me.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. My name is Rictor Craig. It's hard to follow up behind Curtis, so I'll try to do the best job I can. I am a 20-plus year educator, and I am the founder of the National Association of Black Male Educators and the co-founder of Statesman College Preparatory Academy for Boys here in Southeast DC. Super familiar with Ron Brown. Glad to see you all in the room. And also currently pursuing my PhD from the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. Been doing the work around Black boys and men for quite a while, and specifically in Statesman with the work that we're doing in partnership with NABME is trying to really figure out the ecosystem that is needed for Black and brown men and boys to be successful in schools, and we're figuring that out at Statesman. So really proud and really excited to be here today.
Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Congresswoman. It's really great to see these young Black men in here. I know a lot of times young Black men are spoken about, but often they're unheard and unheralded. So it's really great to see you all as a part of this conversation. Sharif El-Mekki, I am the CEO for the Center for Black Educator Development. We launched in 2019 to rebuild the National Black Teacher Pipeline, a pipeline that we view will be highly effective, sustainable, predictable, and just as importantly, protected. Before that, I was a teacher and a principal for 26 years, and we launched the fellowship, Black Male Educators for Social Justice, specifically to support Black men who are currently educators, as well as those who are aspiring to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Dr. Travis Bristol. I am an associate professor at UC Berkeley in the School of Education, entering my 20th year. I began teaching in New York City Public Schools in 2004, and I also chair the Board of Directors for the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards, which is the gold standard in teacher certification, and I am the first Black chair.
Good morning. But first of all, I want to thank Congresswoman Wilson for just championing the cause, of teachers right now. We're getting beat up pretty badly up here sometimes, and when we have a champion like you, it really makes you feel well about the work you're doing. But my name is Rodney Robinson. I am a 23-year education veteran, I am the 2019 National Teacher of the Year. Whenever I say that, I always want to shout out James Rogers, 1972, the first black man to be National Teacher of the Year, and Thomas Fleming, 1992, the second black man to be National Teacher of the Year, and our current National Teacher of the Year, Kurt Russell from Ohio, because I'm in this game because I'm standing on their shoulders, and so I always want to give knowledge to them. I'm currently working HR in Richmond Public Schools in charge of teacher leader pathways to grow and build teachers. One of my projects is a program called RBA Men Teach, designed to recruit and retain minority male teachers in the city of Richmond. And this wasn't my ask, this was a community ask that they put in the Dream for RPS strategic plan, and luckily I was chosen to serve the community and head up the program.
All right, come on, give this powerhouse of a panel a hand. These brothers are power. So what I want to do is start with some questions, and again, I'm going to ask if we would try and keep our responses to maybe a minute or two so that we can get in as much as possible. So I'm going to begin with Dr. Britton. Well, before we begin, I just have to just give a nod to Minister Black. He spoke of the workers of iniquity who sought to who murdered somebody else when he was even a young child. Before I graduated, I grew up in Crooklyn, and so before I even graduated high school, my best friend had been murdered. A brother who got involved in the drug gang, and they snuffed him out even before we had graduated high school. And while I was growing up, the statistics said if you are a black male growing up in an inner city community like Brooklyn, New York, you had a greater chance of living through wartime Vietnam than living through the concrete jungle. But I was blessed, Congresswoman Wilson. I had a mom who knew what to do. She didn't spare the rod. So my mom didn't play that. So she knew what to do. And so by the grace of God, here I am. So what I want to begin with is with Dr. Bristol. If you would go ahead and talk a little bit about what the research says about the root challenges for the continued decline of black men in the teacher workforce today.
Thank you for that. And I also want to echo everyone else's congratulations or thanks to Representative Wilson for the space to talk about some of these issues. So I think that before we get to maybe some of the root cause for why there are for black men, I think it's important to sort of elevate the disappearance that happens the very moment that black boys and black children enter schools. So black children make up 18% of all preschoolers. 18% of all preschoolers are black, yet they represent 40% of the suspensions. So at the very moment that black children are entering schools, they're more likely to get suspended. And when I shared some of these data with the group at the school district, and I asked them, well, explain to me, why is it that black children are getting suspended from preschool? They said, well, because their parents don't value education. Their parents are sort of, don't have care for education. And then I said, well, help me understand, how is it that I have a PhD from Columbia, my wife has a doctoral degree from Harvard, my wife is also on the faculty at UC Berkeley, arguably one of the most prestigious public universities in the world, and nothing prepared me for the day when I had to go pick up my black son, and the director of the preschool said he needed to take a 2-week break. So it's not the case that it's just because, your black parents don't care, because my wife and I clearly care very much about school. So what else is there? So I think that when we think about why there is a dearth of black men in the profession, we have to begin thinking about discipline that happens at the very moment that black children enter schools. Now, of course, thinking about policies and I'll wrap up in a second, thinking about policies to get black men into the profession is important, but what we also know, and some of my own research has sort of documented, is that that the suspension that happens for black children also happens for black adults. That in some ways we have, recruitment efforts are working, but turnover and retention becomes the biggest challenge, because we concentrate black men in the most challenging schools, expecting them to be superheroes without giving them the tools, equipment to stay. And black children can't leave, but the black adults can leave. And so turnover is something that we need to pay attention to.
Wow, powerful, powerful. And this one wasn't one of the prepared questions, but I heard Brother Sharif talk about the connection, and this goes to what you just stated, Dr. Bristol. So 18% of the preschool population, but 40+% of the suspension rate. And does that speak to the connection between criminality and literacy? I think is what I heard Brother Sharif talk about, because for hundreds of years, I don't know if folk realize, it was illegal for the black child to learn here in America. So I don't know, Brother Sharif, this was unscripted, but it was so apropos what the brother said, so please.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Bristol. I've been, following his work from the very beginning that we really became interested in this category. And I think, to double down on it initially, there's research out there that we've known, that we've experienced, that, black youth, particularly black boys, experience their teachers' racism as early as 3 and 4 years old. So just imagine a 3 and 4 year old experiencing racism. They don't have the language for it, but they understand that they're not being treated as full human beings. And it doesn't stop when they become 6 or 7 or 17 or 18. If anything, it becomes more entrenched, and in the act of self-preservation, they may build up a wall. But it's only to reflect the wall that was already walling them away from success in their full humanity. In the quote that you're talking about, Dr. Jarvis Gibbons, if you haven't read his 2 books now, Fugitive Pedagogy as well as Street School Clothes, he talks about that connection where black people were the only group of people in this country where the penalty was the same for being literate or criminality. So imagine that, like the only group of people where learning how to read you would be punished the same way or same rate as if you actually did a real crime. And that connection, literacy and criminality, although it's changed and morphed, it continues to be the same. Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who we all know as the father of Black History Month, was also an educator. And he said there would be no lynching if it weren't for the schoolhouse. There would be no lynching if it weren't for the schoolhouse. And we can fast forward that today. Cultural, emotional, spiritual, and intellectual lynching of our children within our schools is a root cause for a lot of the data and the research and the outcomes that we see.
There would be no lynching if there was no schoolhouse.
If it weren't for the schoolhouse.
And so it causes one to think, when you hear folks say our children are adultified. And even if you recall when I think it was Brother Mike Brown in Ferguson, the officer said, well, he looked like the Hulk. And so that's why I shot him. I got the gun, but I'm scared for my life. He looked like the Hulk. And so, again, if you look at the connection between the criminality and the literacy, if our children are viewed as the other, I think that's what Lisa Delpit talked about, other people should, if they are viewed as the other or animalistic, then you would even be able to look at them as criminals even in the schoolhouse. So there's a connection right there between you viewing them as criminals in the schoolhouse that they should even probably be in, according to how this history, in this country, folk shouldn't be being educated because of their color. All right, so Mr. Craig, if you would go ahead and talk about what have you heard from black boys in terms of what they say they need in their school community to be their best?
Thank you for that question. Got caught off guard because one of my old students just walked into the room who works on the Hill. Wow. So it just threw me off to look back and to see him in the back. But so as one of the pleasures that I get of being the co-founder of Statesman Academy for Boys is also being the founding principal, which I've been for the last 5 years. And this year we get to see our first group of boys go off to high school, but we also get to travel with them to Europe next Friday for 10 days. And before opening up the doors of Statesman, we interviewed over 500 boys from across the nation in grades 3 to 12, and we simply asked them, what would be in a school that you never want to leave? And we were expecting to get one level of data, and we got so much more. The boys began to just simply describe their school day, from the time they got up in the morning until the time that they ended the day. And it was not from the direct quotes that we pulled out the themes that we found, which were in two buckets, really. The boys were telling us what they felt schools were saying about them, but they were also telling us what they felt the community was saying about who they were as well, which is just as important as what schools are saying about our boys. And if we don't pay attention to both of those pieces of data, then we would lose out on creating an ecosystem that is best for our boys. What boys are telling us more than anything is that they want structure. They want structure. They want to be loved deeply. They want to be loved, known, and affirmed. They want people to not burn them at the stake when they make a mistake. They want to not be suspended for the same thing that the white boys are doing. They want to be loved by their moms and not be told to be men too early. They want to not be looked at as criminals. They want to be given the space to process emotions. Like all of these things they were telling us by simply saying, I want a school that doesn't call me gay when I cry. When boys come to school, I was standing next to a mom in the community. And it's these type of situations that are always hard for me, because this mom has a 2-year-old son. He looked to be about 2. Really couldn't say many words, but all he could do is just like reach for his mom. So he's reaching for her, and he's crying as he's reaching for her. And the mom looks down at the boy and says, "Stop crying like a little bitch." And so it's evident from very early on that our boys are being taught very specific things about how to process emotions, how to deal with challenging times as early as before we're able to speak. And so our boys are telling us very specific things, and it is our job as the leader of school places to, I think we did one thing much different than most schools do, which is most schools come into a community, we see that we can do good work, and then we build a school and we say this school is good for you. As opposed to going into a community and asking the community, what do you need? Right. And that's what we did. We went into the community and said, what do you need? What do the boys need? And then we built that.
Nice. Tremendous. Now, it sounds like you were receiving data from the community, and then you made some decisions based on the data. So, data-driven decision making. So to that point, Professor Valentine, why don't you go ahead and talk about what does the research data say about the impact of black male educators on the academic success of black boys?
Before I speak, I just want to say something, because I feel a certain way in this space, and I'm not sure others feel as well. But in many ways, I think we've started this conversation off from a deficit. And I've learned that narratives are more powerful than facts. And there's some narratives that have been put out here, in some cases by us, because oftentimes we become the vessel for narratives about us, about how much black parents, black boys care about education, about whether or not black men value the teaching profession. What if I told you that black men have been attending college and university since the 1700s? What if I told you that after the Emancipation Proclamation, when the Freedmen's Bureau came south trying to give education to black folks, that we had already started schools? What if I told you that after emancipation, when white slaveholders sent their children out into the fields because they believed they didn't need education, that African Americans were the ones who were creating schools and in many ways, as a people, we're driving the goal and the need for literacy in this country.
Yeah.
What if I told you that even right now, the #1 profession for college-age educated black men is school teaching? #1. If you're a black man in America with a college degree, the profession that you choose, #1, is elementary education. I recommend you all buy Ivy Tolson's book, Dr. Ivy Tolson's book, No BS. This idea that in BS he means bad stats. For some reason, as a people, we've become accustomed to relieving false information about ourselves. And then we take that information and we push it forward. I think all the educated, college-educated white women and all the educated black men are more likely to choose education as a profession than white women. But we don't talk about that. And I confess, I'm someone who often leads with only 2% of black men are teaching. I'm starting off from a deficit. Why would you want to join a profession when nobody wants to be there? Ayize said I went to a black college. The one question you ask before you go somewhere, if you're a black college student, is, who all gonna be there? Who coming? Why would I want to join something that no one else wants to join? But the narrative and the facts don't align. We're here. And the brothers you see here, we are but a tip of an iceberg of black men who do this. And some of us are doing it in a classroom, some of us are doing it in our community, some of us are doing it with our fraternity, some of us are doing it with our church. We are here. What do studies also show? Black men are the most engaged fathers of all fathers. But we started off this conversation with this deficit of, where we're not at. And so I'm mindful of that, of my own role in doing so. So I want to put that out there, particularly because with Real Men Teach, our goal is to change narratives, to take that back. Real men teach. What does it mean to be your authentic self? How do we define manhood? And how do we redefine what the word educator means, teacher means? When people say, Curtis, I'm really not interested in becoming a school teacher, but I love my boys and I'm here with y'all after school programs, summer programs, mentorship. And so to answer your question, the role and impact of black men in teaching is both qualitative with the understanding of graduating on time, attending college, and graduating from college on time. Less likely to be enrolled in special education when the data does not show, less likely to be suspended. But that's all the data. But also the idea of just seeing yourself in the educator before you. And I tell the story when I was a middle school teacher at Oxon Hill Middle School in Prince George's County, where I'm also on the school board. I remember sitting in lunch duty, and young black boys would come up to me and they would stand next to me. And I couldn't understand why. And then I realized they were just wanting to be in my space, smell my cologne, see how my tie was tied, or my shoes looked, or what it looked like to shape up my beard every morning. And some of the female teachers would tell them, go sit down. You need to be somewhere. And I would say, no, I got him. He's good. And I realized just by presence, I didn't say a thing. As someone who was a young black boy, having a father who I could just sit next to, I took that for granted because some of my students couldn't do that. And some of them had fathers at home, and they couldn't do that. And so I appreciate that piece as well, because some of it's things you really can't measure. And what we've done recently at Real Men Teach, and for those of you who don't know, we're on TikTok now, so definitely follow us on TikTok. We go to work here. But what we've done is say, let's have, particularly black men in education, talk about who their greatest influence was. And they started pouring out. I want to thank Mr. So-and-so and Mr. So-and-so. And some of it was not about what they taught or the lesson they learned. It was, he showed me what it looked like to be confident, to be strong, to be vulnerable, to be all the things that, particularly as black men, we need to have in order to become school teachers. And I'll stop here. What we want, Real Men Teach says, we have to give space for black men to be their authentic self and for you all to receive us the way we are when we walk in. You want to recruit more black men teachers? What kind of black men do you want? Do you want black male or do you want Curtis Valentine? I walk in with issues. I walk with my unique history. I walk in with both my ears pierced. I walk in with history. But if you want black male teacher A, I'm not your person. But the enabling environment has to be the A before I walk in. And so this is not about a conversation of us up here. It's as a community, both us recruiting, but also retention happens with you. When we leave not because of what happens in the classroom, ultimately because the other adults in the space don't give me space to be who I need to be. And I don't give space to my young students to be who I need to be because I'm not being if I'm being authentic, they say, Mr. Valentine, something going wrong. You lying to me. You told me to be authentic, but you over here faking. Let us be us, and you will see what happens.
Can I? Nice. Let me slip in one more question because I haven't even had Mr. Robinson give anything, and then I'm gonna let you say something, but then we're gonna really get to Q&A because we're gonna go. In fact, I think to 12:15 to 12:20. I hear has been extended to. So I wanna. We love the call and response in our tradition, so I want to get to that. So, Mr. Robinson, why don't you go ahead and tell us what are your thoughts or your feelings about the recent legislation around the country that is looking to limit what teachers can teach and do in their classroom?
Trash. I mean, you can't sugarcoat it when it comes to that sort of thing. We have that history of anti-black racism that's just as American as quote-unquote apple pie, but that is just another thing that tells black men and black boys and black women that education is important. If we want to get more teachers, we need to fight those narratives. We need to, take everything everybody said up here from the moment kids enter preschool, we tell them, black boys and girls, this ain't for you. Literacy is not for you. We don't care about your opinions. We need to create an environment where they can come in, be their authentic selves, but also help support them and say, this is what you can be. Nobody wants to come back to the scene of the trauma for their career field. And so that's the message we're sending to young black boys and girls. And so if we want to do this, number one, we need to expose them at an early age to education as a profession. Say, hey, this is something you can do. By taking the Teachers for Tomorrow program, Educators Rising, just showing them, hey, this is what it's like to be in the profession. And then on top of that, we need to mentor them from a young age and say, hey, this is what it takes to become a teacher. Dean Walter at BSU School of Education, he always says, one reason so many black teachers fail is they just never had a chance at bat before they get into a classroom. And so we need to give them as many chances as bat so by the time they get into education, they're knocking home runs out the park. And so we need to then back that up with scholarships. Not backed in loans where you're gonna pay, no, we need to put scholarships on the table to say, hey, you can be a teacher. And then get them into support ed prep programs and support them in the ed prep programs. We talk about K through 12 being 80% white, well, guess what? College is 90-some% white faculty. And so once again, we're moving them out of one traumatic environment and sending them into another traumatic environment without supporting them. And so then when they get into education, we need to mentor them, we need to grow them, we need to professionally develop them so that they can create their own space and their own lane. But then also we need to make sure we're keeping the teachers that we got. We need to make sure that we're supporting them, we're developing them. And then part of recruitment is finding who likes working with kids. We got coaches, we got people that work at Boys and Girls Clubs, we got so many people who work with children, so it's like, you dating? Let's get this ring on your finger and get your teaching license so you can come on this classroom and work with these kids. And so we got to create alternative programs and licensure to get folks who like working with kids into the classroom. Because it goes back to what Curtis says, they're out there. Right. The college graduates, the black men who are interested in education, they are out.
Something just in support of educators. So at Statesman, in partnership with Statesman, the National Association of Black Male Educators, we have intentionally decided to build and support black men who want to become principals. in respect directly aligned to the fact that we know if we have more black men that are leading schools, they will be able to keep more black men in schools, which will therefore raise achievement for black boys. What they're telling us, because we're asking them this question, why are you staying? Like, why do you keep coming back to me? And they're saying it's you. You are the reason why I keep coming back. It's the proximity to you, so being really close to a good leader that you don't even have to necessarily talk to. You can just see. They can just be the model for you. You can try out the things that they're doing. Next to proximity, it's really the deep relationship, the partnership. Like taking the time to build relationships with these men so that when they make a mistake, they don't get fired. We got to care about them enough to keep them. We say we win with the stickers. We don't stick with the winners. And then third, we know that they need practice. They need the space and the ecosystem to get it wrong a million times on the way to getting it right once. Without the threat of job, their job being taken, their money being taken with no threat of that. So giving them the safe space, like Curtis was saying, to be who they are, and fail at it on the way to getting it right.
Nice. Perfect. All right, come on, let's give this panelist a round of applause. Now we want to open it up for some questions and answers. You all might have had something that stimulated some thought or pricked the heart. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Maurice Cates. I'm in Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton's office. I'm sure some of you might know her, considering her work on the commission in the 90s. So my question is kind of twofold. For one, what can we as congressional staff do to further the interests of black men and boys? And as a curiosity, are any of you all familiar with the work of Dr. Tommy Curry in his black male studies? And if so, do you have any opinion on his literature?
Thank you so much. Any of the panelists?
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go.
I was gonna say, put yourself out there. I mean, you're here. These brothers are here. Make sure they don't leave without speaking to you. I think to the point of seeing themselves in spaces where I think the narrative is we don't do that. We don't. That's not what we do. In some cases, it's like in order to be it, you have to see it. I know there's a question about sort of what policies. There's certain program. I know particularly in the Department of Education, it's really funding historically black colleges who are working with teachers, and so the idea that there's certain policies that you as an individual become more learned on, and then use your platform, social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, to talk about these to the community listening to you. I imagine those who follow you are probably in your age range, in your community, who would be in the target audience of the folks we're trying to get to. But if we're not talking about that, we're talking about the Usher concert in Las Vegas, we're talking about Lollapalooza, which is cool. I went to the Usher concert, he's really dope. But the idea is that we talk about these things everywhere we go. It becomes part of the conversation. That it's not only about the new Jays, but it's also about careers and education, so where they're hearing it all the time in platforms like yours, and not just us with us old heads. And so put that out there, you'd be surprised the response you get.
Thank you, Dr. Bristol, and then I see your hand.
So I think that spending some time with folks in the executive, particularly in the departments. So at the Department of Education, working with folks to really think about how Title II funding, particularly Title IIA, which is really about professional development, could be really targeted around recruitment and retention efforts. So that's one. And maybe also working with the Department of Labor. So we know that when students have an early experience, particularly black students and black male students, have an early experience in teaching, right, then they're more likely to really think about teaching as a profession. I started teaching in New York City because I had work study when I was in undergrad, and I was a volunteer tutor. And so maybe the Department of Labor could target summer youth employment, right, to communities where students in high school are working in an after-school program or working with a classroom teacher, maybe a national board certified teacher, right, as a way to build the quote-unquote pipeline.
And the belief that black and brown boys can be successful. Shout out to your office, because it was because of your office that our boys single-handedly can go out of the country next Friday. Mm-hmm. It was your office that said, bring us the applications, we'll walk them over to make sure that they got that they got what they needed to go. It's your Congresswoman's belief that our boys deserve Europe, that they deserve it, and that their life will be better because of it. It is those type of partnerships and beliefs that allow our boys to have the space to become successful.
Thank you.
Speaking of that, just to quickly note, the DC Commission on Young Black Men and Boys is starting back up again. Aaron Ward, the district director, is holding a meeting on April 4th for the commissioners. If either of you five are interested, just let me know.
One of my boys sits on it, so I'll be.
Well, let me weigh in
Please.
on that. Again, my name is Mark Spencer. I'm the director of the U.S. Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys, which, for the first time in the history of this nation, at the creation and the energy of Congresswoman Wilson, was created by the United States Congress, the first time in the history of the nation. And I'd say to you, young man, I want to shout out the Young Monarchs. I coached basketball for 3 years in the initiation of the school.
Awesome.
But your commission has to link with ours and amplify what these folks are saying. And I'll tell you so that you know, what they are saying is what we are working on the policy aspects to say to the White House and Congress what should be done to incentivize and, most importantly, to fund initiatives, Brother Robinson, to attract and retain black men into the profession of teaching, okay? So you and I will talk before I leave, and we're having a meeting tomorrow, by the way, so we'll tell you about that.
Nice. And to your point, when you have the political will, then you can advance the things that you're interested in. So folk wanted to go ahead and support the Ukraine, and tens of billions of dollars overnight were put there. If we're serious about education, we can put billions there too. Brother, you had a question, and we're going to end with Ron Brown Academy. I see your hand. Yes.
So I'm Dr. Jericus Copes from the Applied Learning Academy, and my question to you guys is, education, as you spoke, started because it was really to have cultural norms from that church, and to get the people able, the kids able to work within what the home did, right? Or they would go to somebody else. So my question then is, because that model has never shifted, we were never, when it was never built for us to be included. So how does that affect, as you started off with saying that it started with the 18% being in preschool, but 40% are being suspended. So how much of that, the cultural norms still being taught in the school that does not include us, affect the preclusion or the lack of inclusion of us as teachers, because now that trauma is now set on the mindset of our young people to say, hey, I'm not going back there. You know, I couldn't even do it as a student. Why am I going to go back as a teacher?
Nice, good question. Anybody?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point, and you know, that's part of, you know, the recruitment effort. You know, there are a lot of black youth who look at their teachers, principals, and other staff, school board members, et cetera, and say, I don't want to be a colleague of yours in the future, right? And, you know, our friend Chris Emden, you know, very similar to what Rodney Robinson talked about is, you know, this idea of recruiting young black men to teach is like recruiting them to return to the scene of a crime committed against themselves. That is why the interrupters are conscious black educators, as well as allies. But like many white teachers, that when I was a teacher and a principal, said some of their best professional development was from black educators. The black educator next door to them, the black educator down the hall who taught them. I just recently did a TED Talk. I wanted to name it, The Black Teaching Traditions Can Save America. They changed it, you know. that wasn't cool TED Talk, you know, TED Ed, but you know, the idea is that there's a mindset and skill that's passed along, you know, and we really have to look at what's the intellectual genealogy of those who are in front of our kids. Not only who's leading the classroom in schools and districts, but who taught them, right? Not just who's leading the classroom, but who taught you to lead this classroom. And we have to recognize that many educators, including unfortunately some HBCUs, their educator prep programs, their principal certification program, they're learning about white educational theory and white behavior theory, and they're being sent to teach and lead black and brown children. Horace Mann, John Dewey, B.F. Skinner, Piaget, Blavatsky, whatever his name was, Freud.
Yep.
They don't have a clue about what Lucy Craft Laney said about teaching black and brown children. They don't have a clue about what Dr. Carter G. Woodson said about teaching and leading schools full of black children. So we have to make sure we're capturing this black teaching tradition. Dr. Akosua-Lesane has been really pulling research from around our history about what are the mindset and skill necessary to be effective, and what did black educational theorists say and implement, theory and practice, which propelled a lot of the conversations that that we had. And I would just say one more thing. I wasn't on my way to the classroom. We have to do a better job of inviting our youth into the profession. When I started the fellowship, Black Male Educators for Social Justice, we were about 18 black men from all over the country, very successful in our field, master's degree above, relatively good looking, with the work. It was drip, brother, drip. And what we recognized was none of us had been invited into the profession. None of them, not one of these 18. And so we said the first action research we did was we asked our colleagues, most of them were white women. The average response from our white colleagues was 3rd grade was when they were invited into the profession. For us, it was after we graduated college. So post-bac for one group, black men, 3rd grade for another group. And so we have to make sure we're inviting them into the profession, sharing them. Part of our work is a paid apprenticeship for high school students to teach, and they teach 1st, 2nd, and 3rd graders. So that theory of lifting as you climb, which was coined by a black woman teacher, Mary Church, who said that? Mary Church Terrell, who said, yes, let's lift as we climb, and inviting the high school youth, this intergenerational model, because that's how black community passed on knowledge and information. It was intergenerational, always.
One more thing. I gotta get to Ron Brown Academy.
Yes.
That is, and then come on, give it up for Ron Brown Academy, young scholars here. Come on, you got a question or comment? Come on, bring it.
My name is Mr. Parks, Christian Parks. This is my 6th year at Ron Brown.
Yes, sir.
I've been there since it was open. The 2nd year, I have not been in any other school. This is the only school that I've been at, so I've been blessed. So I have a comment and a question. So my comment is similar to your story. I was not headed into the classroom. I didn't even think that I was a teacher. It took white women to look me in my face and say what you said, that I taught them something. That I was in my undergrad, I was a theater major, so I was really an arts kid. But they said that throughout my time there, I had taught them something that they had used in their life some way, somehow. And so that was my entrance into the field, was that I was doing it without even knowing I was doing it. And so I said, all right, so there gotta be techniques and tools for it. So then there it goes. I went to Trinity Washington University, graduated in 2020 with a dual master's in special education and general education.
Yeah, bro.
My question is how do we create spaces, or what is the space for them to talk? I recognize that this conversation has been adult driven, and at Ron Brown we believe that if we shut up and let the kids lead the way, we're gonna be all right. And so what ways do we offer? How do we create more spaces for students to have the voice to speak? I thank you for inviting us here. I recognize that they're quiet, and I recognize they're quiet because it's all y'all. And so what does it look like? What does it mean to create more intimate spaces? Because that's what we need. We need more intimate spaces where students can have the intimacy and the proximity, as you were talking about, so that they can say, oh, okay, yeah, I can see myself doing this because I talked to somebody who isn't sitting in front of me, who isn't just. So where are there other spaces? What other resources can I take with me to Ron Brown so that we can do this again and again and again?
Great question. Panelists.
Invite us to your school. I'm serious about that. You know, that's your home turf. That's where you feel comfortable. That's where your students feel comfortable. We will gladly, I'm sure any of us up here, we will come to your school, talk to your students, but you have to create spaces where they feel comfortable.
Always.
and always feel safe to say what they have to say. One thing we do in our RV Teach program is we have community sessions. Sometimes we sit down and we just watch movies with the kids and just talk about different themes throughout the movies that give them a chance to express how they feel and what's going on with them. And so just always going to meet them on their level. What are you interested in? And then coming to the table to talk to them. A lot of times as adults we build tables and we want to talk, but no. I often tell teachers all the time, your job isn't to grab the mic. Your job is to hold the mic for students and allow their voice to be elevated and listen to what they say, then put those plans into place. And so if you're not starting the conversation with your students about what do you need, what makes you comfortable to speak in this sort of element, then you're out of bounds already.
Can I add to that?
Go ahead,
I knew I would be able to get my comment. Two things, and it was actually the comment that I was going to say to the last statement, but it's very fitting for this question. We've got to turn schools into places of healing. For black men and boys, we are just being re-traumatized over and over and over again. Boys leave schools, go to others. We have boys coming from the highest performing schools in the district who feel the same way that my boys that are coming from Ward 7 and 8 are. So it is clear that we've got to turn schools into places that say, we love black boys, we love you black boy, we love you black man, and we're going to take care of you. I think that's first. Second, we've got to offer the tools that will make us better as black men and boys. It is the very reason why we have 3 full-time therapists for our adults. If you look like me, you need to be talking to somebody. You've gone through a lot, and you're going to bring that in, and that's going to land on children. For us, the slogan we say all the time, our boys will take my job and yours. In order for them to take my job, they've got to be equipped with the skills to take it, which means that I have to equip them with those skills. I have to protect them from the spaces that are traumatizing them, which means that, do you know how many people that look like me that traumatize kids that look like me more than people that don't look like me? We've got to check the people that look like us too.
Right.
We can't just check the people that are known to do this, to do these things to us. We've got to check the people that unknowingly come into schools and are projecting their mindsets and beliefs on our black and brown boys. And so, in order to create, we have to stop going to find spaces to be safe for us. We've got to make them and be unapologetic about it.
All right, so I see the time. I know we got to get ready to get out of here, but let me do 2 things. So one, I would say, I'm imploring folk to consider Montessori as a career option. And so my organization actually just is launching this 40 under 40. So we're trying to get 40 leaders who are interested in education under 40 years old to consider Montessori as a career path. So I would welcome the opportunity. We're putting up, over $50,000 on the table to fund folk to get some education into Montessori. So I would welcome the opportunity to go and talk with your scholars at Ron Brown about that. All right, so I got a memo that said that Dr. Moss should get the last question. So Dr. Moss, if you want to go ahead and yeah.
Brother gets a memo.
Oh wow, I don't have the last question at all, but I did want to just honor and thank. Well, I'm Dr. Moss. I'm the senior policy advisor to Congresswoman Wilson. I manage all her black men and boys work. I manage all her work as ranking member of the Higher Ed Committee, and I get to work with Dr. Woodland every day. And I do want to take this opportunity to honor Dr. Woodland for his work on this. Let me tell you, Dr. Woodland joined our team as a fellow. He left private practice to come do this work, and specifically in Congresswoman Wilson's office. He launched this caucus. He's done this independently, and if you have ever worked on the Hill, for those of you who work on the Hill, you understand how difficult it is to pull anything off and to be able to coordinate schedules and the like. And so this gentleman has worked aggressively and able to do this. So I just wanted to make sure I honor him in this space and thank him publicly in front of all of you.
Moss, you didn't really have a question then, you had a point. So this brother's been pressing, I want to get his question in. But also, to talk about Dr. Woodland, he helped to found this trailblazing piece called Young Docs DC that is helping to build a pipeline to get black folk into, particularly into medicine. And so, yeah, you can look up Young Docs DC's doing big things. Brother, you've been persistent. Come on, bring your question or comment.
Has to be persistent. Real quick offer and suggestion. I'm Ken Phelan. I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs and Innovation at Storm Center Communications. We're a technology company, a NASA technology company. Our software technology is on NASA satellites.
I'll take your chance.
So we do Earth observation. We mapped the pandemic. If you know about the Johns Hopkins map, that's part of our project. One of my observations, I go to a lot of technology summits, conferences, whatever. I rarely see black men on the panels as technology experts. And I'm kind of like frustrated by that. So I'm at a technology company, so I've said, well, even though we're not a black technology company, I'm the only African American there, I want to start a program where we initiate leveraging, collaborating, partnering our technology with HBCUs.
Nice.
Because even though I didn't go to HBCU, I used to work at Howard, even though I didn't go to HBCU, I want to make sure that we train young people to become technologists. AI, machine learning, all kinds of technology platforms. So what we can do, we can leverage our technology because we map the entire planet. We can provide the technology to help colleges, universities, or departments, no matter what area they are, forestry, urban planning, agriculture. Our technology can help them to prepare their communities for the next pandemic, for climate change issues, for things that really impact our black communities, the environmental justice. So if there's a coalition of black educators that I can collaborate with to sort of, engage with colleges and universities, let me know. We're willing to do it. I know a slew of other chief information officers, chief technology officers who are black that would like to be a part of that coalition as well.
All right, thank you for that. Anybody, any thoughts in terms of how to make a connection between the HBCUs and technology?
I would say using organizations like the National Association of Black Male Educators. There's an organization, Urban Ed Academy. It is based in Oakland, San Francisco, and their work literally is doing what you're trying to get at. I can connect you with those folks as well.